Hello, and welcome to the Dear Old State Update, brought to you by Penn State Sports Night. I'm Maya Beeling alongside Nico Rodriguez to bring you the latest on Penn State sports.
Our beat reporters have been busy covering various Penn State sports this past week, from the whiteout to the women's hockey season opener. The Dear Old State Update starts now. This past Saturday, Penn State hosted Oregon in the annual whiteout at Beaver Stadium. Kaylee Tallman and Amanda Vogt were on the sidelines. Let's now throw it to them at the monitor with more on the game.
Yeah, thanks, Nico. It was another close, tough loss to a top 10 team for Penn State this Saturday against Oregon. Although the atmosphere in Beaver Stadium was unbelievable. Over 111,000 fans packed the stands, providing the most electric atmosphere I've seen in my 4 years as a student here at Penn State. But unfortunately for those fans, they left with their heads hanging low after another Drew Aller interception left the Ducks victorious in double overtime. Amanda, it just feels like old news for Penn State.
Yeah, it really does. It was a familiar scene that Penn State fans witnessed in the Big Ten Championship in the Orange Bowl, and now for the first time in their home stadium when Oregon picked off Drew Aller. The team rushes onto the field and then heads to the south end zone where the student section is from, and they had white shakers thrown at them. The whole game was chaotic coming down the stretch. It didn't initially feel that way, but it was a scene that people didn't want to see. And by the numbers, Penn State has now lost the past 15 top 10 matchups, and in the James Franklin era, he's 4-21 in those battles. So it's not a good sign statistically for the Nittany Lions.
I think for Penn State supporters, it's getting harder and harder to defend this coaching staff and Drew Aller, especially, although I think the environment did get too hostile hit to him, and especially the online backlash that has come from that game has been unfairly targeted towards Drew, because if you look back at that game, the pocket was collapsing on him.
The offensive line didn't do him any favors.
The entire time. It really was. And I think you have to give him credit as well for the performance that he had in that fourth quarter, because that's Penn State football. That is Penn State football to its core. And big thanks to this guy who caught 2 of the touchdowns to get Penn State back in that game. You know, the air was sucked out of that stadium.
It didn't feel like a whiteout.
No, when it was 17-3 in the beginning of the fourth quarter, the air was really just zapped right out of the stadium. And then Penn State came on and down in 4 plays, went down the length of the field, scored a 35-yard touchdown to Devontae Ross, followed up by that 7-yard touchdown as well, also by Devontae Ross to tie it up with less than a minute to go. Defense did their job the entire fourth quarter, completely shut Oregon down. And I think that's what makes this so much more painful for Penn State fans.
Yeah, and that 4-play drive, after I heard chants from the press box of Fire Franklin coming from that crowd, and then 4 plays and a touchdown, that felt unfathomable compared to how Penn State had been playing. Then on that next touchdown drive, Drew Aller finds out his legs can move him down the field. Katron Allen gets a few chunk runs. And those were pivotal moments for Penn State. But where was that in the first half? In the first quarter, it was scoreless. Oregon, although they won, wasn't playing a perfect game by far at all. The noise got to them in the beginning when the fans were on their feet. They punted on their first possession, but Penn State punted 6 times. And that field goal they had in the first half was longer than their offensive drive. They only had 70 yards of offense in the first quarter, which is not good at all. Penn State knew they needed to get off to a fast start, and it happened in the fourth quarter, but it was a little bit late. If they were playing like they did then, it would have been a lot better.
I think the most shocking factor as well about that first half is that Oregon was also completely shut down, because Oregon is known to be a first half team. The whole big thing about Oregon is, wow, they're going to get out and they're going to score early and they're going to really put the dagger on you in the first half. And they did not do that. However, you have to look really closely at things like the time of possession. Oregon owned the time of possession.
By 8 minutes.
Especially in that first half, right? And then the other thing to look at, which I think not enough people are talking about, we brought up the O-line. Drew Aller was sacked twice.
Yes.
Our defensive line, as in Penn State's defensive line, did not get to Dante Moore a singular time, which I think contributes majorly to this huge stat differential right here. 248 total passing yards for Oregon compared to Drew Aller's 137. And the big thing to pay attention to on this graphic is 39 passing attempts. Penn State did not even attempt to throw the ball. And I think that's what contributed majorly to this loss. It was the same play over and over and over again. And you saw that as well in double overtime, running that very predictable play on first down that resulted in the interception. Now, where does this go from here for Penn State, right? You still have the majority of the season left, including 2 huge games that have become even bigger against Ohio State and against Indiana. Now, Penn State's schedule as well is a lot tougher than I think a lot of people originally anticipated. You have Ohio State, who's the best team in the country. You have Indiana, who's currently ranked 8th right now. And then Nebraska is also kind of receiving votes, making a name for themselves as well to end the season. Good thing for Penn State, though, is if you go back to Ohio State last year, who won the national championship, in my opinion, that loss to Michigan is the one that really propelled them to the national championship. So actually, James Franklin has had Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator, sit down with the Penn State defense and remind them of that. You know, you've still got the rest of the season to make a statement, and I think that's going to be crucial for this team.
I agree. While this loss has crushed the souls of many of those in the building, I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing in the world, which a lot of people think I might be crazy for saying, but it's going to force that urgency into this team further. You can't have Drew Aller going 6 of 12 in the first half. That is not going to win you a football game. It's going to force those fundamentals out early. And I feel like Penn State's season really didn't even start until Saturday. They played a weak non-conference schedule. But now this game, win or lose, was going to kickstart them into gear because it was going to be their first real test. Jim Knowles even said he wasn't going to even figure out what the Seaflames would look like until it played a quality opponent. Now you mentioned the Ohio State point. He was on that staff, won the national championship. And I think just having that vibe, although it's a tricky system, it really was effective against Oregon.
So important.
They just got tired. And Franklin said that today. Also, you just need to do better on first down on both sides of the ball because third down was horrible. This is going to be when Penn State plays UCLA, the first road game of the year. The fact that they had 4 home games and a bye week and are now just hitting the road against UCLA now is kind of crazy to think about because we haven't seen what they look like on the road. There's travel implications and all of that. But there's 33 days until that Ohio State game, which is marked on everybody's calendar, including ours.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be a real test. But for this weekend's matchup, you're going to need to see Penn State play a little bit more cohesively, play together from the get-go. And if you see a convincing win, then I think that'll just reinstall confidence, I think, in people who cover the team like ourselves and also the fans watching from State College and around the country rooting for those Nittany Lions.
Big thing about UCLA, too, is they are dealing with an interim head coach, which if Penn State can't manage to work around an interim head coach, the Nittany Lions have a serious problem.
All the more reason why they need to show up and show out. Now, Penn State will travel to California on Thursday. On Saturday's game will be played at 3:30 Eastern time. But on Friday night, there's a very important matchup for the Nittany Lions at Rec Hall. With more on that, we'll send it back to Maya with Parker and Logan at the desk.
Women's volleyball entered the weekend ranked number 15 in the NCAA rankings with a record of 6-4. On Friday, it was a 15 versus 17 ranked matchup against USC with Penn State getting the victory. Sunday, they faced unranked UCLA, and despite the distraction of the whiteout weekend, all eyes were on this Big Ten matchup. And energy was high as it was their Thon match. Let's go to Harlan Pena, who was there.
145 days till Thon and the women's volleyball team is celebrating. With their annual Thon match against UCLA, the fans, the band, the cheerleaders, and even the Nittany Lion were repping yellow construction hats in honor. The players had yellow ribbon in their hair as well.
You know, we talk about playing a sport, and, you know, it's definitely, Thon is really special. And, you know, I know there are a couple Thon families here and really special people. And, you know, I pray for those kids that they can all get better.
Despite a loss, it was still a successful outcome as they brought awareness to Thon and pediatric cancer. They played USC last Friday and UCLA today. As the Penn State gets acclimated to the Big Ten play, they're going to get the rest of the season.
I think the Big Ten is really tough. I mean, everyone kind of wants to see us lose or Penn State lose, but we got to be able to punch back like right from the start. So I think going into practice, we just kind of have to be able to focus on things that we know we need to do better in the match.
As they go into this week, they turn to the next match against Nebraska, another Big Ten opponent. Coach Katie with an early thought.
I think every match is important and has the same value, and we need to understand that. Like I said, it's really hard to win in this conference, and there's short windows of time when you can score points and close out a set, and you have to be able to do that. And so we're excited to move on to the next, but learn from this one and start preparing.
The reigning national champions opened their Big Ten season with a win over USC, but then fell to UCLA on Sunday. I'm here in the studio with women's volleyball beat reporters Logan Quinn and Parker Mirzayan. So let's start with Sunday. That was an unexpected loss for Penn State. Let's start there. What do you guys think?
UCLA played very strong during this match. They were really good on their blocks, and they picked apart Penn State's defense, and they found those gaps, and they attacked. So they were a very worthy component despite being unranked. So there was a reason for Penn State's loss. They were not as aggressive, and there were very small errors that did lead to points that you could not afford to give up.
Yeah, after the game, we spoke with Coach Katie about those small errors, and she said they just need to be eliminated because they do add up and cost the Nittany Lions the game like we did see on Sunday. Some errors I saw were holes in the block, a lot of missed serves. They would either eat the net or fly out of bounds. And in the first set, right at the beginning, there was a lot of miscommunication right off the bat. But after that first Nittany Lions timeout, they did come back stronger, and they really did apply those corrections.
What it seems like to me is that there's a problem with the team chemistry, which is interesting because it seemed like everything was going right on Friday. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so Friday, another Big Ten matchup, number 17 USC versus the Nittany Lions. Rec Hall was absolutely packed. It was a great atmosphere. It's whiteout weekend. It's really nice to see all the fans come together and support all these sports. The Nittany Lions came out really strong. Their kills were nailing the ground. They won the first set by over 10 points, blew USC out of the water. They carried that energy on into the second set, but USC didn't let them off easy. They took the game into 5 sets, but the Nittany Lions, with their offense, managed to pull through and come out with that win.
It was a game that you would expect for a number 15 ranked team versus a number 17 ranked team. So they all played up. It was an amazing performance, and you could see the talent on both teams.
And there has been so much hype around this team this year, especially with them having won the national championship last season. But they have unexpectedly dropped in these NCAA rankings, and no one really saw that coming. So what factors do you think has played into this most?
I think a lot of it has to do with momentum, but like you said just now, they came into the season ranked number 1. They were national champions. They really had that whole weight on their shoulders. That's a lot of pressure. And then just 3 weeks ago, they lost their star setter, Izzy Stark. So I think there was just a shift in momentum, in chemistry, and they're kind of in that rut trying to figure out how to build back that chemistry. It's hard to connect with new players and new rotations. So learning how to connect the pass with the set, with the kill, I think that does take time.
Yeah, it is very clear that they are feeling that loss of Izzy Stark. She was a huge leader on that team, but they will have to start figuring that out as they have yet again another Big Ten matchup coming this Friday, and it's against number 1 Nebraska. They are not a team to overlook. So what are you guys expecting?
I'm really looking forward to this match. I think it'll act as a benchmark for where Penn State was and how they are now, because we do have history with this team. We beat them in the semifinals, moving on to the championships, and now they're number 1 ranked, and we're currently at 16. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they play. They're not at a loss for talent at all. They have some wonderful players. Kennedy Martin had 34 kills at the UCLA game. She's outstanding. So if they are able to tap into that aggression playing at home, I think they have a chance against Nebraska.
Yeah, we'll just have to see how that plays out on Friday. Let's head over to the monitor where Nico is joined by Nolan Collery, who has the latest on women's hockey.
I'm joined alongside Nolan Collery, who was at the women's hockey season opener. Nolan, let's talk about the St. Lawrence game.
Yeah, it was an incredible series on both ends. Number 8 ranked Penn State Nittany Lions, number 9 ranked St. Lawrence Saints. So you knew you were in for a classic immediately, but ultimately it was a really one-sided affair. Penn State took game 1 3-0, game 2 5-2, and Penn State played near perfect hockey for the first 5 periods of their season. Didn't allow a single goal up to that point. The defense looked sharp. The offense both had old faces and new faces really coming in and firing. A couple first-time goal scorers because of freshmen, but one big highlight was Ty McDonald, who's been a long-time leader on this team, even though just a sophomore, such a critical part of that AHA championship last year, getting her first career goal from that defenseman position. So really fantastic to see, but St. Lawrence fought back within 4 minutes. They scored twice to make it a 2-2 game, but Penn State at the end just poured on the offense. There was no response St. Lawrence possibly could have had. So now Penn State finds themselves ranked number 6, the highest they have ever been ranked in program history. So this feels like a team that really does have a bright future with the season being so young.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those impact players that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's really hard to just point your fingers at a couple of them, but it's easy to start with AHA awards. Tessa Janicki has now won the AHA Player of the Year and Forward of the Year 2 years in a row, and I frankly struggle to find any reason to believe she won't do it again. But she's not the only incredible, experienced player on this team. You also have Caitlin Roberts, Kendall Butsey, and Katie Disa all making that all-AHA preseason team. So not much spots in the AHA if you're not wearing blue and white to make that preseason team so far. But there's a lot of other really strong talent on this team. You have the second-year players of Grace Outwater and Ty McDonald, like I just mentioned, who got herself her first goal. You have some young freshman talent, including Matilde Fanton, who just got her first collegiate goal, looking fantastic, as we see right here. She's someone that we're going to talk about in just a moment. But this is a team that's a combination of youth and experience that is looking to not just go far in the AHA, as they are defending champions of both the regular season and the tournament, but a team that might have a chance to really compete when the end of the year comes and the NCAA tournament finds its way later into that winter, early spring season.
Yeah, let's now talk about that potential upcoming international play.
Yeah, it's what's making this season really interesting is we have Winter Olympics coming up. And these are 4 players who, as of right now, have been in talks with camps, have either had invites or straight up, in the case of Tessa Janicki, going to be on the roster. So she had a fantastic offseason with Team USA, scoring a golden goal in a championship match against Canada. But Matilde Fanton for Italy, Nicole Hall for Sweden, and then the newcomer, Taylor Lum, actually a transfer from St. Lawrence, looking to be a probable for Team China's roster. So ultimately, it's a team that's going to be leading 2 established players in Hall and Janicki, and then 2 newcomers who are looking to have that huge impact. Again, Fanton having her fantastic first goal. She's on that first line right now, so really looking solid. And then Lum looking to be a really solid 2-way defenseman, as she did in her entire career with the Saints. So it's going to become interesting once some of these players leave. And there are other names to keep your eyes on. Leah Stecker, for example, Grace Outwater, for example. These are names that you could see ending up on their national team camp, if not roster. And that means they will need to take some time away from the team. So it could look like a lot thinner bench once that Olympic season does roll around. But at this point, besides Tessa, it's really anyone's guess whether these girls are going to make their way to the roster or not. But it's kind of making the season more interesting as you're getting to see younger talent start to step up and fill these roles that will be left open.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the season plays out and what happens with the international play. But the team will travel to Burlington, Vermont to take on the Vermont V-Cats this weekend. We'll now take it to the desk with Maya, who's joined alongside our women's field hockey beat reporters, Charlie and Teresa.
Thanks, Nico. 5-0 at home and 0-4 on the road. Penn State field hockey has had a shaky start to their season. I'm joined by beat reporters Charlie Drexler and Teresa Casanova. This team had both home and away contests this past weekend, and those ended very differently for this team. So let's start there.
Yeah, so on Friday, Penn State played Michigan State, winning 2-0, but a very competitive game. I mean, it was 0-0 the entire time until the last quarter. And the last 6 minutes is when those 2 goals came about. I mean, the first one was a breakaway by a freshman, and the second one came off a corner. They were both great goals, but it was such a competitive game. I mean, and then on Sunday, we played Syracuse. Unfortunately, we lost 3-2. But again, to the very last seconds of that game.
Yeah, so Syracuse scored those 2 goals to end up winning the game in the last 2 minutes. That last goal coming with just 36 seconds left. That is an incredible feat by Syracuse to win that game. And it came so late. I don't think Penn State was expecting that.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, and as you guys just touched on, this field hockey team they have not won a single game on the road so far this season. So it seems like they're having a road struggle, which is interesting because they look pretty good at home. What's going on there?
Penn State is such a strong program. I mean, they really shouldn't be struggling on the road. They're facing a lot of overtime games that came out of ties.
Yeah.
So they have had 3 overtime games already, and they lost one of those overtime games on the road against Gettysburg. So this last game, they were tied 2-2 until that 36-second goal. I think they're struggling in breaking those ties, in scoring those last-minute goals to really secure the win. Also, defensively, keeping those teams outside of the circle, away from scoring, keeping that ball in the middle of the field just to gain possession.
I mean, also, I think it's just a comfortability factor. I mean, we're 5-0 at home and 0-4 on the road. So I really just think the girls just have to break out of that shell just to get comfortable being on the road and like coming together just to clinch a win. I mean, we are having close games, but it's close enough that I think it's going to happen soon. Coming up this weekend.
Penn State's environment is truly electric, though. So there's no doubt that they're playing better at home.
Mm-hmm.
The fans last game, there was a local field hockey team cheering them on in the stands, which really carried them. The energy was electric.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be tested on the road again on Friday as they head to Michigan to face the Wolverines. So let's preview that matchup a little bit. How are the Wolverines looking? How's Penn State looking?
So Michigan is 6-3 with a record, and Penn State is 5-4. So they do have a similar record, only really a 1-game difference. So it will be competitive. Michigan did beat Michigan State 5-0, where Penn State only beat them 2-0. So both teams are able to score goals against Michigan State, which means they should be in a competitive game against each other. Michigan is, though, a really good team. They beat UNC, which is a really competitive program. They beat them 3-0, which was a really incredible game. So I think it's going to be very interesting. I hope that they can improve their road record to 1-4, but only time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan University and Michigan State, that being a game of 5-0, but 4 of those goals from Michigan University were all off corner. So I think Penn State's defense, if they really just push through and be aggressive, it's going to be a great game. I mean, competitive wise, like she said, they're 6-3, we're 5-4. It's going to be close for the records. And on Sunday, we're playing Ohio State, another Big Ten competitive school, and their record's 4-5. So I really think it's going to be a really competitive weekend. I think being on the road, we'll finally get some wins now.
Penn State has a really strong defensive line. Their goalie had an incredible 20-plus saves against Michigan State. Their defense is led by their senior captain, Anook, so that will be amazing. We're really expecting a competitive match, and hopefully it'll be offensive heavy.
Yeah, I mean, you put it perfectly before, Charlie. Only time will tell. Now let's take a look at some of this week's top plays.
Field hockey in the fourth quarter with under a minute to go. Ella Jenness seals the game over Michigan State in their Big Ten opener.
Penn State's going to go up to 2 goals.
In women's hockey's home opener, Caitlin Roberts scores the first goal of the season for Penn State in the first period. Women's volleyball, Jillian Grimes receives the serve and back sets it up to Kennedy Martin, who gets a kill for a Penn State point. Penn State football, with under a minute to go, Drew Aller passes to Devontae Ross for a 7-yard touchdown, setting up Ryan Barker for a game-tying field goal to send it into overtime.
3, 2.
Coming up this week in Penn State Sports, men's soccer is home tomorrow to face Robert Morris University. Then they hit the road for a game on Friday against Michigan State. Women's soccer is also on the road facing the Scarlet Knights at Rutgers on Saturday. Men's and women's ice hockey are away Friday and Saturday. The men's team will take on Arizona State while the women's team faces the University of Vermont.
Field hockey's in Ann Arbor on Friday for their game against Michigan. Women's volleyball will be home at Rec Hall for a Big Ten matchup against Nebraska. Lastly, on Saturday, Penn State football will hit the road for the first time this season to play against UCLA.
For more content, be sure to follow us on Instagram and X. Plus, be on the lookout for weekly sports updates and game day packages right here on YouTube. For everyone behind the scenes, the beat reporters, and our producers, for Nico Rodriguez, I'm Maya Beeling. Have a great night.